Hi there. I know that many of you are wanting to start this year of 2022 off on the right foot by making healthier choices, but with all different diets, detox programs, and supplements, you might be wondering, where should you start? So I'm here to tell you that besides putting Jesus Christ first, spending time in the Word of God, and getting yourself grounded in Scripture and in truth, and meditating on His Word to help center your mind and keep your heart focused on the right things, I'm here today to share with you 3 main principles of healthy eating to start impacting your health drastically. I feel that God created us to sort of entrust us with our bodies, and that He wants us to be able to take care of them the best that we can. And He has provided food and, a source of nutrients for us to survive on. So it's up to us to decide what sorts of food we're going to put into our bodies. Hi, I'm Joy Hoisington, functional nutrition coach and natural culinary specialist, and I help people with digestive and health challenges get to the root of their issues through a functional approach to their health care. I post videos on Thursdays each week, so stay tuned for videos regularly by subscribing below if you wouldn't mind taking a moment to do, and turning on the notification bell so that you can be notified for every new video that I post. So I actually just taught a local seminar on this very topic, so I thought I would do a short version for you on this channel today so that you too also can get the scoop on how to make healthier choices right away. As you know, there are many choices to make that are healthier, such as low fat, low carb, organic, gluten-free, non-GMO. Not that those are all the healthiest choices, but they're all kind of things that you might see floating around online or that you might hear people talking about. But where do you start without getting overwhelmed? So I'm going to share 3 main principles, like I said, to revolutionize your health in a simple way. Principle number 1 is going to be choose whole foods. Whole foods are just foods that are in their natural whole state, the way that they grew or basically were to begin with. Choosing whole foods are basically choosing foods that have been processed and refined as little as possible. Some examples of, for example, whole grains are going to be brown rice, oats, corn in its whole food state. And some other whole food examples are meats, fruits, and vegetables. Okay, so these are things that just have one ingredient. They're just the whole food itself. Now, whatever you're eating most of the time is what matters. So I'm not saying that you must eat whole foods 100% of the time, but if you can aim to eat whole foods most of the time, that is going to make a big impact on your health. I like to tell my clients that don't aim for perfection, don't aim for 100% of the time, because that's going to be what leads to a diet mentality. Instead, try to focus on, like I said, having a routine where most of the time what you're doing is eating whole foods, but then you give yourself some leeway once in a while. Of course, like in a time where you might be really rushed and you might not have meal prepped or have food cooked and you don't have time and you have to pick something a little bit more processed for that time being. Some examples that are not whole foods are chips, pasta, bread, white rice, and French fries. So as you can see, foods that have been altered and changed and milled, and there are multiple ingredients in there and things like that, so that they're no longer down their whole food state. Another way to think about whole foods is how much color is in your diet. If you look down at your plate and you see maybe meat and pasta or meat and bread, and there's no color on your plate, that's when you need to really start being concerned, because that means that you are not eating a lot of whole foods. If you have a lot of white in your diet, a lot of things like white pasta, white bread, chips, crackers, just lots of different processed grains and things like that. The thing is, grains, they're very yummy because they're sweet, especially when they've been processed and everything's been taken out of them, all the nutrition except the glucose. So in America, it is a big staple in our diet, is just lots of processed grains. But grains are supposed to be brown naturally. That is the natural color of grains, and that's because the bran on the outside, which is the covering of the grain, is brown. That is the part that contains fiber, protein, healthy fat, and some vitamins and minerals to help us actually utilize the glucose from the endosperm on the inside of the grain. So trying to incorporate things like lots of fruits and vegetables that have lots of color. And if you are doing grains, sticking to whole grains and not making that, the bulk of your meal, but also making sure that you're incorporating the fruits and vegetables in there as well is a very good habit to get into. Principle number 2 is blood sugar balance. All diseases worsen by an imbalanced blood sugar. This is because of the inflammatory effects of high sugar in blood vessels and how closely it impacts our hormones. Things that trigger dramatic blood sugar fluctuations are eating the standard American diet, which means low fiber processed foods. And some things that are going to improve blood sugar balance are eating a low glycemic, anti-inflammatory diet, high in healthy fats and protein, and exercise. These are some things that you can do. Now, these types of foods are going to be foods such as avocados, wild-caught fish, fatty wild-caught fish such as salmon, mackerel, and codfish, nuts and seeds in their whole food form, organic meats, olives and olive oil, coconut butter, organic yogurt, and dark chocolate. These are all the foods that I'm talking about that are whole foods that are higher in the healthy fat. And for the dark chocolate, you want to aim for at least 70% cacao because that's going to avoid too much sugar, of course, in the chocolate, which is not going to be a whole food, and that's going to be something that fluctuates your blood sugar. You can do endless amounts of fresh vegetables cooked all different ways. One of my favorite dishes that fits the standard is blackened wild-caught salmon baked with a generous amount of all kinds of spices and herbs like paprika, garlic, thyme, oregano, rosemary, and then alongside something like a cauliflower mash. And you can also do other vegetables on the side like spinach, a broccoli carrot medley, or green beans or something like that are going to be rich in lots of healthy nutrients for you that aren't going to fluctuate your blood sugar. Now, some high glycemic load foods are going to be things like processed grains such as pasta, cereals, and breads. Basically, the foods that we already talked about that are not whole foods, most of the time they're high glycemic because the processed foods tend to have a higher processed carb count in them, and obviously less fruits and vegetables and meats and things like that that are going to help stabilize your blood sugar. Some other ideas are things like, obviously, things with added sugar. Now, fruit has a sugar called fructose that does not lead to a fluctuation in blood sugar, and that's because fructose does not convert to glucose in the bloodstream. It's actually a simple sugar that goes right to the liver, and it gets stored in the form of a fat, or what's called a triglyceride. Now, your body can convert that into sugar at any time if needed, but the fructose being in fruit is what prevents such a drastic blood sugar fluctuation when you're comparing it with things like regular plain table sugar, like something like white sugar that's going to go right into your bloodstream right away and spike your glucose levels. Now, another thing to mention too is the skins of the fruit also have fiber, so that when you eat fruits with skins on them, like apples for example, then the fiber will help to slow down the glucose absorption. And I should also mention that it's not 100% fructose that's in the fruit. There is also sucrose in fruit. It's usually kind of around a 50-50 ratio. So you don't want to eat fruit all day long because you can also still have blood sugar fluctuations with fruit, but it's not going to be as drastic as something like eating a donut or something with a lot of processed carbs and added sugars. Another thing you can do to lessen the glycemic load is you can eat carb-rich foods paired with a fat and a protein. For example, if you're going to eat brown rice, you can pair it with grilled chicken and broccoli, which will provide a large amount of protein and fiber for that meal without adding extra carbohydrate loads. And principle number 3 is toxic load. The definition of a toxin is a substance that is very poisonous when introduced to human tissue. They can be in the air, the food we eat, and the water that we drink. And the best way to filter the air is with a HEPA air filter. This is the type I use in my home. This is the type I recommend for my clients because it filters the most intensely and works well. Now, the people that should filter their air are people that live in a high traffic area, so that there's obviously a lot of pollution in the air around your home. And then some other reasons are people that might live near a farm where they're spraying pesticides and it's not an organic farm, so there are harmful poisons in the air that could be getting into your air that you're breathing in your home. And then lastly, if you have any allergies to dander or if you have allergies to dust, those are all going to be reasons because we want to limit the allergic response happening in our body so that our immune system can be functioning and focusing on the things it should rather than things like allergens. Now moving on to water quality. You can research your water quality online through the water supply company that you have. The water filter that is the most heavy duty at filtering everything out, toxic, is called reverse osmosis. We should be drinking half our weight in ounces of water each day, and we are 60 to 70% water as humans. So we really need to make sure that the water we're putting into our body, which should be quite a large amount, is clean water and not full of toxins and pesticides. Now moving on to food and toxins in food. Basically the most common source of toxins in food are going to be pesticide exposures. And in order to substantially limit the pesticide exposure, obviously looking for certified organic is going to be helpful, which is at least going to make sure that 95% of the food, or that the food is 95% organic, is technically what certified organic requires. Another thing we need to look for too, if we are not buying certified organic, is non-GMO, especially if you are going to be buying foods that contain things like corn, soy, and cottonseed, which are almost always GMO in the state of America. And the processed forms is specifically what I'm referring to. So things like corn oil, corn starch, high fructose corn syrup, not that we should be eating things with a lot of those additives anyway, but if there is those additives, then that's something we need to check on the label and see, are there additives of soy, additives of corn? If so, is it definitely non-GMO project certified, because that ensures that there's no glyphosate or Roundup sprayed on those crops that the additives came from, basically. Another thing that I recommend to do is to buy all of your fats certified organic. So things like meat, because meat has a high fat content, and animals that have been fed feed that has pesticides mixed in, those pesticides can accumulate in animal tissue. And then when we eat the meat, we actually are putting that, it can definitely carry through to what we're eating and affect our bodies that way and put a burden on our liver and our kidneys to filter those things out. The reason why fats are important, and of course some other things are things like coconut oil, butter, fats, olive oil. The reason why we have to focus on having healthy fats and organic fats is because 90% of the fats that we digest have to go through the lymphatic system before they enter the bloodstream. So what happens is they're circulating around in our lymphatic system with all the toxins in there for quite a while, which is really not a good idea. And so that's why we say go with certified organic, so that you're not putting those toxins into your body. They're just going to be circulating around. Another thing that I wanted to mention about certified organic is not all of us can actually afford certified organic everything, but if you could aim to at least get your Dirty Dozen foods certified organic, so these are foods that are listed by the Environmental Working Group each year, crops that have been tested that have the highest level of pesticides. If you can at least do the Dirty Dozen foods organic, and then your fats organic, like meats, dairy, because dairy has a lot of fat in it, and then of course plain straight fats like I mentioned before, coconut oil, olive oil, and butter, that is a good place to start. And some people can only start with, for example, the Dirty Dozen, and that's okay. Wherever you are financially that you can start, some reduction of toxins is better than no reduction of toxins. I will also leave a link below that shows you all the Dirty Dozen for this year, so that you can look it up yourself and see what crops are on that list this year. And in addition to that, if you feel like you want a little bit more support this year with your health that is more specific to what your needs are, I have left a link for you to go ahead and book a 30-minute free assessment session with me below, so that we can have a little bit of time to chat and just discover what your needs are and if there's anything I can do to support you in your health journey. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time.